So today I have Tim Carter. He is a driver in the Portland area, the Portland, Oregon metropolitan area, doing rideshare. I think rideshare specifically. Um, Tim, thank you for coming on, first of all.
Steve, I can't thank you enough. I've been following your podcast for some time, um, and I started out trying to find advice on mostly YouTube, and then once I started punching the word podcast into iTunes search engines for podcasts, then I came across you, and I appreciate you propelling information about the gig economy as well as you do.
Thank you. I mean, I do try and take a different approach than most. I do try and obviously I represent the drivers first and foremost. That's my thing. I'm one of you guys and I get it and I know what we go through and I am not afraid to help people stand up and say their stories and put the truth out there. I mean, these companies need to hear these stories too, because as you might hear in this piece, even you might hear some pieces where these companies did hear these stories. What have they done about it? We need to find a place where they care enough to do something and not just give us lip service. You know what I mean? Or an extra $5 for our troubles.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of crap that makes me go nuts. Like, I don't need your $5. Why do you think I took 40 minutes out of my day to make this call? I've been on wait. Obviously, I could have just dropped this and said, forget it. I'm just going to move on. But obviously, that's a big enough thing to me. And $5 doesn't fix the situation at all. $10
Absolutely.
doesn't, $20 doesn't. And in many cases, 1,000, 5,000 doesn't.
Well, and one of the reasons why I reached out to you specifically is because I've heard you mention that you were an independent contractor in your previous life, and I was as well. Before I got into gig work, I was a subcontractor licensed and bonded in the state of Oregon, city of Portland, as a window coverings installer. So I installed, measured, and troubleshooted, blind shades and draperies for companies like Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco. And when I entered the gig economy, and I was issued the moniker of independent contractor, I was kind of taken aback by the absolute disconnect from being an actual independent contractor as to what was being defined in the gig economy. So, and I don't need to tell you, it's like, if there were situations where if somebody had hired a plumber to fix a sink, and then that person pulled up to the driveway, and then you just texted them and said, well, another person has come here to fix my sink and they're doing it, but we don't need to give you any information about that. Your job is canceled. That's kind of one of the areas where I started to having different thoughts about the gig economy. And then I could kind of let that go until it came to issues concerning my safety. And those issues came under the microscope for me in Portland, Oregon in the year 2020 during the turbulent year that we had here. And I had several incidents with concerning rideshare. Rideshare specifically, this isn't delivery, this is picking up and delivering people. And I had some issues with about 6 or 7 different stories that I hope to share with you and your audience, and tell you how the platforms dealt with me in regard to these difficulties.
So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, I think a lot of us need to hear. Even so, to the listeners, even I haven't heard a lot of what Tim and I are going to discuss yet. He's given me a little bit of an overview beforehand, but I don't know these specifics. So we will just roll through these. And, I think that I honestly think that it's good that we're hearing from you too, because I'm interested, because this is even more interested because this is the Portland market. And all of us have been hearing about Portland for, 2 years now, or whatever it's been, almost coming up on 2 years, 4 months short. And it's constantly. So we know that Portland is a city, and maybe not, maybe you're going to correct me of this, of of either unrest, or it's become a commune of a place for people to go and feel like they're part of different movements that are going on there, and has maybe brought too many crazies into the scene. And I know Portland's always been a very, I've been up there a bunch of times. I think that Portland's a great city. I know it's always been very friendly to all types and lifestyles. You know what I mean? Like skaters to this, to that, to the other, to the other, to and there, and that's kind of what I always loved about Portland. Now I feel like it's an extreme that has kind of backfired, and people maybe took advantage of that even a little bit. Um,
Well, I don't think that, I mean, the reason I'm coming on your podcast isn't as an indictment of Portland, Oregon.
no, no, I just think that it's played a role in some of the way people feel in the city.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've lived here 46 years, and I'll be the first to admit that our leadership has been pretty clumsy. Um, but these issues that I'm about to bring up are pretty rideshare specific. And when I listen to other stories and when I look at other news feeds from around the internet, and I see the same things happening in cities like Chicago or Florida, for instance, I kind of have to wonder if we can do more as a rideshare community to protect the driver. I think you're right in that Portland is a ripe atmosphere for a testing ground of maybe some of the rules and regulations that need to be implemented in rideshare. But this is an indictment of Portland, Oregon itself, and also
Oh,
the
it's
things
that's
the
fully
things
understood.
the things that I'm about to say. I also want to say that this isn't a true indictment of Uber and Lyft, because it's some of these things are areas I found myself in areas where a lot of drivers will say and push back on. They'll say, well, a good rideshare driver would not, a good cabbie, a good anything, they wouldn't find themselves in those situations. So these are situations where I have done my best when communicating with law enforcement, with public resources, with radio stations, and with other people across the internet in the Portland area to try to keep myself out of harm's way as a full-time rideshare driver in the year 2020.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think one thing we should touch on before you even start is how, when you did onboard first, how long you've been doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. So my first move into the gig economy was with Lyft in late 2018. And then I decided to get out of subcontracting as a whole. And I just kind of decided I didn't want a boss anymore, but I kind of wanted a boss, but you know how it is. And so I was like, well, I, I, I met a young lady. I guess I'll say this. So it's a true story. I met a young lady who was selling Hyundai cars, and in 2019, I bought a new Hyundai because I was in love with this lady's pretty face, and I succumbed to her charms, and I bought a new Hyundai Elantra. And so after all that collapsed, I decided I would go into the gig work full time, and I onboarded with Uber. So let's see, about March or April of 2019, I started doing gig work, doing rideshare, I guess about 10 to 15 hours a week. And then towards the end of 2019, I found myself in a situation as the onset of the pandemic came, where I needed to rely on rideshare full time. And that's kind of where my story begins in terms of what I experienced on the platforms.
Okay. Fair enough. So I guess I mean, you probably have some sort of order. I don't know if it's chronological or what,
Yeah.
but let's kind of jump into where those issues started happening and what was the surrounding circumstances of them.
Sure. So let's start in 2019. So this is pre-pandemic, clearly, and Portland is kind of on the up and coming radar of the nation. And we get a lot of people coming in, a lot of tourists, especially from the Bay Area, a lot of people coming in wanting to buy up, lands, wanting to move here and everything. And so the summer of 2019 was pretty intimidating. in terms of the influx of people that were using rideshare. And then all of a sudden, about the first of 2020, when the pandemic started happening, then there was like this week. I remember when my governor, Governor Kate Brown, I remember when she announced that there was going to be a 4-week halt of everything. And then I just remember I went from going from $200 to $250 a day to, I was waiting something like 2 hours for a ride, unless I went to the airport, in which case there was at the onset of the pandemic, there was something like 180 to 200 people in the airport queue, when on average pre-pandemic, it was, 70 to 80 people. And so at first I kind of panicked. And then after about a week, I started watching as other people on the internet started, like there were sprouts. You could see people in other markets that were saying, hey, people are kind of coming out of the woodwork. People don't really believe what's going on. So I'm making a lot of money doing rideshare. So I went all in. And lo and behold, after the first week of the shutdown, I was making like $400 a day on a Tuesday. It was unbelievable. And then the George Floyd thing happened. And Portland is known for, a pretty progressive market. And we kind of, will riot for pretty much no reason. And that sort of came to, I want to put this delicately, it just kind of seemed to start adversely affecting me. And so I want to start there with story one. And also say that, again, I realized that I could have probably done a lot better when it came to positioning myself, knowing my city after 46 years. I could have done better, but at the same time, it's, I think that these platforms can do better too. So I just want to start with story one. The first day of the riots in Portland, Oregon, I got up early. I'm an early morning guy. I traditionally don't like to drive the night shift because I'm fairly introverted. I'm sure, as you can probably tell, like I'm not looking at the camera. But so my first ping was right about 5 a.m. and it said heading northeast, and it's coming out of downtown. Nothing unusual. So I figured this is a pickup downtown. We're going to the airport. And I go downtown. I arrive on time. I pull up right up alongside Broadway, and there are two relatively normal looking people standing there, a man and a woman, not intimidating at all. And I figured, okay, these people are going to the airport. They've got bags with them and whatever. So upon loading the bags into my trunk, I noticed that all of these bags were filled with brand new towels and dishes and a bunch of stuff that was still in what you would call like brand new retail condition. And I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. So I took them. It wasn't to the airport. I took them over into Northeast Portland. I dispatched them, and then I got another ping back downtown. Again, heading in the same direction. I go, okay, well, shake it off. And same thing. When I got there, it was the same thing. And it was a guy standing there, an unassuming looking man holding like garbage bags full of stuff. And I thought, all right, this is getting kind of weird. And so I took him to his destination. And then I got another ping downtown. Now, this is where everything started to make sense. A young lady got into my car and she said to me, hey, have you been driving all night? I said, no, I just started. And she goes, did you know that they smashed open all the windows and stuff of Pioneer Place Mall and the Target. And there's a bunch of decimated buildings downtown, and people have been looting all night. I said, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. So this young lady was just going to work. And so when I dispatched her, I turned the app off, and I went back downtown. I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to continue my day. And I saw a police officer. And so I went and I bothered him and I said, hey, I introduced myself and I said, hey, I told him exactly the same story that I just told you. And the police officer didn't even say hello. He said, is that a dash camera? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, okay, you need to go to this address right now. And he wrote an address down, which was about 13 miles south I-5 in the city called Tualatin. And he goes, you need to go give all of your footage from that dash camera to these people right now. And I said, okay, do you mind if I ask why? He goes, I do mind. Go. So I went to Tualatin and I took out this tiny little card out of my dash camera, my Van True Pro, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. Yeah. And I handed it to the young lady across the counter. She put it into a laptop. 20 minutes later, she said, thank you. And I tried to ask her questions. She wouldn't have any of it. And I was back to work. And so I called.
Can I ask, did you feel threatened?
Yeah.
Like, did he look at your plate and write it down when he told you to go there? Did he do anything that made you feel like, oh crap, he's got my info? And
I had never been in that situation before, so I wasn't.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it went beyond even, and he was like writing your plate down and going, I need you to go here. And now you're feeling like, oh gosh, he's got my plate. I don't know what this is about. Or if it was just,
I'm sure he did.
You were just trying to do your best, like your civil duty.
Yeah. And so, I mean,
you know, this stuff's going on, but okay.
I'm nervous. And so I didn't know. I went to bed the previous evening at like 7 or 8 p.m. expecting to get up like any other day, go downtown and pick up some airport runs, which is what it seemed to be on the app. And so to experience all this, I'm still, I didn't know. It's not like I listen to news radio while I'm in the car. I'm usually listening to a podcast or something. So I wasn't aware of what was going on. And this is right after the George Floyd thing. And so I just kind of did exactly what he said, but I knew from the young lady that I had dispatched earlier that what was going on. So I just complied. And after that, I wrote to I think it was Lyft that I was doing the rides for that day. And I said, hey, all of this has happened to me. I just kind of wanted to let you know in case, anything comes up in terms of an inquiry or whatever. And I didn't get a reply back from Lyft. And that kind of gave me pause. So I wrote them again and I said, hey, this is what's happened to me. And I recanted the whole story exactly like I told it to you. And again, I didn't get a reply. And I don't think that it's their responsibility to reply, but at the same time, I think that it's their responsibility to at least acknowledge that one of their contractors is going through something like that, because I can't imagine that even with thousands of rides that they probably deal with every day, that particular situation is normal. So then later in the year, there was a guy that I picked up at a place downtown, and the ride was hailed for him by a third party. And I was taking him to a hotel because a riot was slated to take place. And so this was super early. This was like 3 to 4 a.m. And I took the guy over to an area called Clackamas to a hotel. And then he said that he had a reservation there. And he came out of the hotel, opened my trunk, put a bunch of his belongings back in and said, well, we need to go to the hotel across the street. So I didn't really think anything of it. Maybe he just got the address wrong or whatever. So he went over to across the street, and that hotel apparently turned him down as well. So now this guy starts getting hostile with me because I'm telling him, look, it seems like we're 2 for 2 here. You kind of need to tell me exactly what's going on, because the ride isn't going to, my insurance is going to cover this ride unless we actually have a destination. And so this guy got hostile and started slamming the luggage cart into my car, started calling me all kinds of racist names, and started basically kind of wanting to fight me, I guess, or whatever. And so once I was able to get this person's belongings out of my car and my trunk closed, I backed into a Chevron gas station, and this person came around to the front of my car and would not let me leave. And it's kind of weird to remember, but he was on the phone with somebody and wouldn't let me proceed out of the parking lot back onto Highway 212 to get out of there. And I'm on the phone with Lyft at that time, and I'm telling them exactly what's going on. And I have my dash camera right on the guy. He's standing right in front of my car. And so the guy, some police start to come from the opposite direction of Highway 212. And they weren't engaging with my situation, but they were going someplace else. This must have intimidated this guy. The guy gets out of the way. I leave. That was in January of this year. So in May of this year, after having documented that in everything that I just told you, after documenting all that with Lyft, everything that I went through, I get a call in May saying that this person, the same person recounting the same story, has filed a discrimination complaint against me, and that I'm temporarily banned from the platform until I can essentially apologize for what I did. They wanted me, and I have audio of this phone call. They wanted me to say what they wanted me to say in order to reactivate my account. So in that regard, I kind of had to call into question whether or not I was an independent contractor or not. So that was my story of picking up somebody that was displaced by the riots. These next stories, I'm just going to go in faster order. They don't require much more detail. Number 3, I decided to start driving later in the evening to maybe, I don't know why, but anyway, I started driving later in the evening. So about midnight one night, I was called out to the airport. So I'm called out to the airport. So that seems like a totally safe pickup to me. It's not downtown. There's no fires. Nobody's lighting the airport on fire. So I go to the airport, and I am met at the hotel just outside the airport with 2 large men with shields, helmets, and batons outside in, like, I'm sure you've all been there. If you've driven rideshare, you go to a hotel and there's like this circle pickup. You go in one way and you come out of the next. And so I'm right there. I'm pulling in, and I'm right there at the door, and the doors slide open, and here come these people. And I told them, I said, look, I know what's going on. I know where you're headed. I don't want any trouble. I can't take the ride. So these guys say, well, you can comply, or we're going to say that the car smells like alcohol. And I said, look, you can kind of say what you want. And then another person comes out of the hotel dressed in a suit and says, are you taking this ride or not? And I never got, I don't know who this person is. He was like, I don't know, probably about 6 foot tall, heavyset guy. And he was like, are you taking this ride or not? And I said, I can't take this ride. And he goes, well, you better take this ride. And I said, says who? And he says, you better take this ride. And he just kept like staring me down. And at that point, one of the people that were in the helmet, the black block or whatever you want to call it, circles around to the passenger side, gets in my passenger side rear. And so now they're in the car. And so I just get in the car and I took them downtown, and I was able to negotiate with them during the ride. I said, look, I can't take you all the way downtown because I don't know what's going on down there. But here's what I'll do. I'm going to take you to Powell's Bookstore, which is on 12th and Burnside. It's about a 4 block mile to where, 4 block walk to about where the action that I know is happening. And it seems like you guys are looking for action. They didn't acknowledge one way or the other as to whether or not they heard me. They just had their headphones in. I dropped them off at the Powell's Books and we left. And so I called, that was an Uber trip. And so I called Uber afterwards and I said, hey, I was kind of harassed and threatened and intimidated by these guys. Also, I gave them the name of the hotel that I picked them up at. And I told them exactly what happened. And again, I got this from them. They actually did reply, and but it was one of those scripted responses where it's like, hey, we understand that you have experienced this, and we're sorry, not every ride is going to be as exemplary as the next or whatever. And so, hey, let us know if you need any kind of help, and also here's a link for if you need to review any of the terms of service and all this. So I kind of drove away from that one. And that leads me to another story of January of this past year, where a guy that I picked up from, I pulled up to 3rd Avenue, and this guy gets in my car. And I can tell that there's action going on further up the way, but it's
so
a
when you
good.
keep referring to action and you're talking about these people, I know you can't say for certain, but are you kind of, is your best guess that they were part of the rioting and that
It's
they
no
were
secret.
headed
Yeah,
down there to be part of it?
it's no secret that, I mean, right in the middle of downtown at about 4th, that, I mean, that's where the Justice Center is. And
Okay.
so the Justice Center is sort of the
Right.
apex of where everybody wants to go there, light the place on fire and whatever. And so that's the nights that I drove. When I was driving evenings, that was the area that I was trying to avoid. And later, of course, the riots would span out into further areas, even beyond downtown, which we'll get into. But this guy, in January that I picked him up on 3rd, and it was about 4 blocks west of where the Justice Center was. So, which is about as close as I would want to get. And so this became a sort of, I think it's important to tell this. This became a sort of the move if you were going to catch an Uber or Lyft, and if you are a protester or a rioter or however you want to say it, is to, when you're done doing whatever it is that you're down there to do, you would then put your pickup point just outside the riot, of course, because all of us started to become critically aware of what was going on. So it was hard to get a ride. And so I picked this guy up. I'm taking him to Milwaukee, which is actually close to where I live. And he begins to say a lot of super vile things about, what he wants to do to my mother and what he hopes happens to my sister, and just blah, 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 blah. He's constantly. And then I asked him, I said, where is this coming from? And he goes, I want to thank you for your service. And I said, I'm not sure what you mean. And he goes, I can tell by your haircut that you're probably into some military stuff, or you're probably a cop. And this whole thing starts to develop inside the car. And I said, sir, you've misread me. I don't know what's going on. I'm just giving you a ride to where you need to be. I'm going to have to drop you off right here. So I pulled over onto Southeast Washington Street in Milwaukee, and I let him out, and he won't get out of the car. And his words to me were, you've messed with the wrong millennial. He used a lot stronger language than that. And I was like, okay. And the guy won't get out of my car. And I said, look, I just need you to get out of my car. I'm going to call the police. And so I dialed 911. As you're looking at me, my phone is like right here. And so I just dialed 911 on the dashboard, and he saw that, and he's bad mouthing me the whole time. He's chirping in my ear while the 911 operator, I'm trying to give her details as to what's going on. And so finally, the Milwaukee Police Department in Milwaukee, Oregon, I'm just going to say this out loud, they're pretty aggressive. And so it was within a matter of seconds, like there's like 4 SUVs around me, and this guy takes off running. And I filed a police report with the police, and this person has a record. They'd known about this guy before, and so I called Uber. This was an Uber ride. I gave them the police report number. I told them everything that went down, and not only that, but just days before the incident, I had completed the RAINN, or RAIN 6-part series that Uber has you watch in terms of, how to
Which, by the way, folks, you don't even have to watch it. I mean, I mean, you should or whatever, but like you can hit play and walk out of the room on these videos. It does not matter. They just need to see they were played through your account. It's absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You don't have to watch it, but what I learned from watching it is that in episode 3, it says verbatim, and it even gives you the closed caption at the bottom. It says, if you're under threat for any reason during a ride, you can dispatch a customer and cancel the ride without penalty. Emphasis on without penalty. So I gave Uber the whole spiel, just like I told you. I gave them the police report number, and of course this guy gets to 1-star me, which I know a lot of drivers will push back. Well, ratings don't mean anything. You don't cash out ratings. I get that too, but at the end of the day, it is kind of a punitive sort of psychological game that they play, and I don't like that somebody can do that to me inside of my vehicle, inside of my property, when I'm lending that time to Uber that they're paying me for, and I get penalized for it when I have to literally sign away all rights to mediation before I even log into the app for the first time. I don't dig that. So if Rain is going to tell me that, I can do this, I can get rid of this aggressive person that I need the police to get rid of, and this guy gets to brandish me with 1 star, I think that there should be some sort of mediation levied to get rid of that. The after effect of this was that Uber called me a couple of days later, and it was a person that was not, if you're an Uber driver, you've dealt with Uber support, and you know that these are people, they're either from the Philippines or they're from Colombia or whatever, and they're just kind of doing their job. It's an outsourced call center. This person was not from that.
Both first and second tier these days are. So I mean, even the second tiers aren't handled here directly. So it's really sad.
Right. So this person was not from a call center. This person was very clearly presented himself very professionally and articulately, and however, the first thing he did was reference me to a sexual assault unit to Uber. There was nothing sexual that went on with this interaction. And so when I recanted the story back to this person, and I told him exactly what happened, and he started stumbling a little bit, and then he started kind of falling back on scripts. And so I kind of had to stop him, and I said, hey, and I told him, just like I told you a moment ago, I took these rain videos, and it says in video number 3, blah, 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 without penalty. And I've been issued a 1 star, and I've been threatened with assault to the point where I had to involve police. What can I do to get this taken care of and getting taken off my record? And all he said was, we completely understand. Why wouldn't you feel that way after watching something like that? After we told you, and this is the words that he used, after we told you that you could do this without penalty, you've now been issued a penalty. How, kind of like, how dare us? And he never once, he just continued to dance around the issue until I was willing to give up. And I don't know. I felt
I
that
wonder
trouble.
if the sexual assault portion of this is just because you were relating it to Rain and he wasn't hearing the story quite correct. And he's like, Rain, that's our rape thing. And
Well, but the Rain, I brought up Rain after he was done talking.
okay. Yeah.
So I
I'm
don't
just
know.
wondering what keyword was in there that shot him off to that, because I have numbers in my phone that most people don't have. I have Uber critical response direct. I'm on with them in 1 minute if I need to. Like under any circumstances, that's what I'm using. I'm not going to go through a Rain video or through customer service or first or second tier. I'm calling that. I used to call that when they'd shortchange me $10 or some kind of monetary issue. I'd call it critical response.
So I don't know if it's, maybe our markets are different, but I was required to take I had to complete the Rain, the 6 videos of Rain, or else I was given a
Right,
timeline.
but you just have to watch them on in the app, right?
Right. I was given like I think it was a 60 or 90-day time frame where I kind of had to watch it, or else I could not perform on Uber.
Right.
So if that's the
I've
case,
had to do
then
that before too. So
yeah. So I mean, why not live up to what you're outlining on what you're making me watch? You know what I mean?
well, there's also another issue there, which is something you and I had
Employee.
touched on. Yes, is that they Uber doesn't even provide you a training video when you first sign up. You get your background check done in 2 minutes by Checker, who does a horrible job. We were even talking in some comments recently about how I had Gary Middleton in a comment thread going, man, I've watched Checker suspend people, and when they send the letter, it's not even their name. They checked the wrong person and sent it to the wrong address. Like they don't have their stuff together. And if people knew what Checker charges companies, how little it is, you'd understand for that much money, there cannot be much of a check going on.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to say, you're probably right on a lot of accounts. My experience with Checker is that I had an issue with Uber where they, after 1 year of driving with Uber, they said that my driver's license was fraudulent. So my first reaction was to reach out to Checker. Checker answered the phone with a representative, and they told me that they had just verified and okayed my background check and sent it to Uber. So my fight was with Uber. So they actually sent, Checker was kind enough to actually send me a copy of the background check that they had just days before suspension.
They have to, though.
They sent that to me. And
right,
so, and it said it was okayed and checked all the way down the line. So I'm not doubting that they also make their mistakes, but at the same time, when confronted with the evidence, Uber is so lax with their, with any kind of real-time motion in getting people activated when it comes to their stream of income.
Right. I mean, some people might take 3 weeks to be onboarded by Checker, but there's direct correlations that we've proven in the past where if a market is low on drivers, you're approved in 5 minutes.
So, I don't doubt that.
So that tells me right there that Checker's not really doing anything. I mean,
well, they helped me in that regard.
I mean, I'm glad that happened. I shouldn't say anything, but I'm just saying I happen to know what they charge too, and I just know that what could that possibly get you?
It got me on the phone with somebody that
when they charge it to Uber.
Me.
So they Checker charges Uber when you onboard,
sure.
And then per year, and that amount is so little. What can that really be verifying?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, how deep is that check really going? Because I don't know.
Well, my last
For under
story
30,
just
for under $30, I don't know what Checker's doing that really could be like, this is everything you need to know about this guy.
Sure. Well, and the same thing with the passenger. I know that Checker doesn't check the passengers, but I mean, if I had had a comprehensive analysis of the passenger that I had back in January that I needed the police report for, then I probably would have had that guy as a passenger, and all of this would have been a moot point.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, I guess I can go on and on about similar things. Kind of looking down my storyline here. I guess I'll tell one more that I think is probably relevant, and then the rest of them are just kind of along the same lines. I have an incident on film where I went to go pick up some. It was three ladies, and this is late. Let's see. It was early summer of this year, and this was a mask violation. There were just three young ladies that were intoxicated, got in my car, no masks. And I just said, hey, I need you guys to have a mask. I'm just enforcing Uber protocol. And so these young ladies got belligerent. One of them got out of my car to go get a mask. And then when she came back, she also was carrying like a large radio, and she goes, I have a mask now, and then turned up her radio full blast in my car. And I was just like, look, I can't drive with this distraction. So I'm just going to end the ride. You guys, it's fine. Just get out. And then moments later, I received a discrimination complaint and a 1-star. And this was another situation where I had video footage of it. And I sent the video footage into Uber. The footage was, I don't know if it was viewed, but it didn't seem to make any difference. Once I made a substantial and articulate point with these ladies and what exactly went down, it just seemed like the more poignant that I got about the case and the more evidence I could provide, the less and less Uber was willing to engage. And eventually it just faded into nothing.
So what I take from your stories is, this is a lot of the stuff that I think about too, is that we're facing, and I'm dealing with this all the time. We're facing, AB5. We're facing that type of legislation around the country in many states, even right to work states. And the PRO Act threatens the right to work states even. And, do we want to be unions? No, I don't. I know you don't. But even if we were unions, what would they have done in this same situation anyway to help you? I'm just going to say that probably not much. What is a union going to do? Much more. It's what they're going to make everybody strike in Portland that ends everybody's incomes, because that's about the extent of what they can do. So then I have to refer to what we've been talking about many times, and you and I talked about it a little bit beforehand today, is some sort of classification for on-demand app-based gig workers. And none of us like that word. None of us want to have any kind of constraints on ourselves. But if something were to come out here in the United States that wasn't union based, that wasn't corrupt out of the gate, that was a separate entity of all the gig platforms and could be doing the background checks and doing everything properly, and if you had a problem, you called them and they got Uber on the phone with you, or arbitration type systems that could happen immediately. So if somebody wants to like 1-star you, and I've talked about this before on the platform too, it kind of is real. Yours are much more extreme situations, but like somebody wants to go downtown Denver, but they call an Uber and then they're like, hey, if you just call Uber, you can get that ride refunded just by saying your driver sucked. That's something that has happened to many drivers I know, and handfuls have been, axed or nixed from the platform because somebody wanted a $10 free ride that they saw the amount, they knew what it was, they probably had a great ride, and this happened. Well, Uber is so scared of that employee model that there's a point when they seem like your friend in the beginning, when you're calling in for help. The first tier feels like they're trying to help you, but they really don't understand, and they're just going by the book, like you were saying. Like, if this, turn to page 7 kind of thing. And that's not helpful. But then as you go up the ladder, you feel like they're on your side a little bit. But I feel like when you get into the really, really bad situations, that's when they start to say, listen, I don't know who you talk to, but we don't want any part of this. And they start to wash their hands as soon as they see that that might be an issue, because you're not an employee, you're an independent contractor, but they're an SaaS platform service, being a middleman to connect you with your driver. And so really it gets really sticky. And does everybody want to be union? No. Do some? Yes. But I see a lot of pitfalls to union. I'm not, I would have never thought in 2014, 15, 16, 17, even with the bad, I've done a ton of rides, but even with the bad rides I've done, and I've had some circumstances that I've had to deal with that, weren't so easy. However, I would have never thought during those years that I would have wanted any kind of regulation. That's not something I would have, if somebody said, well, what do you want? Regulation? I would have been like, no, I'll just keep dealing with it like this. But things have moved to a new level. And if people don't think that something's going to happen, you're crazy. I mean, there's going to either there's going to be unions, there's going to be regulations, and something's going to happen. And to me, I'm starting to feel like some sort of regulations are probably the easiest way through this. I don't know if it's, again, a standard. I was talking to you beforehand about, like, if a passenger does one of those scams where they just want a free ride, or they want a 1-star you to get an $11 ride out, or whatever the reason might be, why, here's my thing to Uber, is that they should almost want a regulator who says, okay, and like I was telling you, like, instead of just refunding their $10 trip, say, no problem, we'll refund it and we'll give you a $20 gift card. Here's the thing: we need to have you and the driver on an arbitration call, record it so that we have it on file. I would think that 99% of the reported BS would go right out the window. People get very fearful when they hear, well, we need this recorded.
Well, and I guess too, that would also help in the fact that in December of 2020, there were 2 Uber drivers and 1 Uber Eats driver murdered in Portland. So it was kind of a weird. One driver was, I know this wasn't supposed to be like an indictment of Portland, but one driver was from Iraq, and their family had moved to Portland. This is the family of an Uber driver that was murdered, and they literally said that after the murder of their son and trying to navigate the system with Uber, that they had planned to move back to Baghdad. So I can only imagine. I don't know what it takes to get you to want to move back to Baghdad once your son is murdered as an Uber driver, but that's pretty extreme. I think, Steve, the solutions begin with transparency, and we need more upfront trip information. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a very controversial statement, and you can push back on this. I would love to hear your thoughts, but we also need to find a way to pragmatically define discrimination. Because, and I don't mean discrimination in terms of black, white, person to person thing, but if I'm an independent contractor and I decide that if I heard on the news last night that there was a gunfight in this area of town and I don't want to take work there, that shouldn't say to the Uber platform and to the Uber algorithm that I'm a racist person. Do you know what I mean? Because X amount of people live there. I think that we need to start redefining in the workplace as we start exploring these third options. I think that we need to start redefining words for what it truly means to be an independent contractor. And we just need better driver support, period.
Well, not only better, we need way more active driver support too. Like things that actually get done, not just a guy patting you on the shoulder while you're on the phone with him.
Can I ask you a question about, I know you have a lot of inside knowledge about this. So one other safety concern I had outside of all this is that I dated a young lady for a time that was also an Uber and Lyft driver. And one night we were together on the sofa just having a meal, and the phone rang. And this is a person that had contacted her through Lyft. And at first I didn't believe it. And so I went to my phone because I'm also a Lyft customer, and I went and I could see where I could reach back as far as several months and call, like literally call the driver that I had several months ago, which is what this guy was doing. So I went to the Lyft hub and I told a representative at the Lyft hub exactly what happened. And the person asked me, what kind of call was it? And I felt like, well, what difference does it make? This person is reaching out to someone, why? And then they just kind of dismissed me wholesale and then sent me back. Also, anyway, I want your thoughts on that. Do you know if that's still going on on the platforms where you can actually reach back to your drivers? Because that could affect. I know that you were talking about earlier in the last podcast about, somebody picked somebody up took them to the airport. They're going to Mexico for 7 days, and now your house is robbed. This is kind of the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yes. To be honest, I've always been shocked by how all of that works. I do see, like, I'm also, from the service industry for many years, and I've done production for many years. And when it comes to the service industry part, I will say that, never in my life have I worked anything where a tip can be taken back for 48 hours. That to me is completely crazy. I think it's a lot of people refer to it in the delivery game as baiting. I don't really know. I don't do the amount of deliveries, although I understand fully what they're saying. But when they relate it to rideshare, I'm like, no, it's not baiting, because we don't know that. We don't know what the tip is, so you see it after, at the end of your day or whatever. So I don't really understand the point of tipping just to retract it, unless it was a horrible trip or something like that where the retraction meant something. But if you put in a tip, what is making you go back in there to pull it out? And why do you need 48 hours? You know what I mean? Like, why? I would think it would be great that you can go in and add a tip, but you shouldn't be able to pull any back. So if you decided, hey, I tipped him $5, he really did a good job, and I forgot to add more to it, and it's 24 hours later, that's a great feature. Let them add to it. That's great. But why do they need to get in contact with you? Why do they need to see anything on you, even though they're not seeing they're seeing a masked phone number and all that? But the fact that they're even able to push something and get to you is pretty scary. I mean,
Absolutely.
these people should not have access to this. And if they do, it should be a number that goes to Lyft or Uber, and then Uber or Lyft, again, one of those things, they bring you on the call and record it and let the other party know it's being recorded. I just have a feeling that I believe heavily in, if you tell people they're being recorded, 99% are going to hang up. And I'm not trying to say that, like, if you had a real situation that because it's recorded, you'll hang up. No, if you had a real situation, you'll let it be recorded. That you wouldn't have any reason not to. So the only people who do have a reason not to are those who, I don't want to put guilt on everybody, but those who probably very likely are guilty of something, even if it's trying to scam a free ride or what. But there is no reason at all that any customer should ever be able to get back in touch with you, even though, like, when it comes to taxes and stuff, we all know that they're your clients because Uber has to say it that way. But Uber doesn't have to allow them to be able to get in touch with you. I can't go back into my Uber app and call them from the driver's side. Although
No,
I
you're
can,
absolutely
I can in a very short period. Like, I've had situations where I've seen a wallet, and I'm like, oh crap, they left their wallet or whatever, and I can get them. But that even has like a 20-minute, 15-minute window before you're just being connected to Uber. So if, like, I noticed it at the end of a night and somebody dropped their wallet at like 8 and I end my night at midnight or 1, and then I see it when I get home, I can't get in touch with them. But I can call Uber, they'll get in touch with them, put us in touch, all this weird stuff that happens. and then they're like, and we'll give you a $5 fee to take it back, like, whatever, dude, like, enough. I mean,
And
there's no
taking it,
reason why we should. I mean, like, that's a perfect example of how, I mean, like, I could have something very, you could have left your laptop in my car and I don't see it. And all of a sudden I realize it's there and I try and call you and it's no longer available to me, but you're allowed to call me days, week later.
well, and the reason I even brought that up, Steve, and I don't mean to get all dramatic about it, but that ended up being a point in our relationship where I had to question the integrity of the relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, here's a guy calling a lady I'm dating, and come to find out they're reaching out through the Lyft app. So, and that ended, I'm not going to go into great detail, but that ended up being something that was a wedge between her and I. So I'd like to put that out there. But I really think that the solutions start with trip transparency and a redefinition of discrimination. I don't think Uber and Lyft gives us enough leverage to make the right decisions in terms of not just our income, but our well-being. And I don't know what the answer is.
Well,
They're corporations, they don't care about us. But at the same time, I'm worried about the permeation of this. I'm worried about the permeation of this kind of business model and how it's going to work its way into traditional workspaces. And as newer generations come up, they don't know the difference between being able to make situations on their own behalf where an algorithm is just making the situation for them and it puts them in harm's way.
I couldn't agree with you more. And to be honest, part of my passion maybe for all of the kind of stuff that I advocate for that you're speaking of is the fact that I have a 15-year-old son. You know what I mean? So, like, where is his world going to be at this pace? Because that is fearful to me. Um, he's a smart kid, he's a great kid, but it makes me worry. It makes me worry a lot. But I transparency, I know that you listen to the podcast, so you know how I am about transparency. That's probably something I say on every episode somewhere. I mean, that's what we do at Para. That's what we were. That's why Para started. It wasn't tip transparency for DoorDash. It was that we wanted to get your data from Argyle IO and be able to show you all the way back to the very first trip you took, every piece of data you'd ever want to know. The UK demanded its drivers got this in court a couple of years ago. And we just started getting people's for them because we thought, hey, you know what? We have a way to get this and we're going to get it for you because you deserve to have that. You deserve to see all the non-transparent BS, even after the fact that you've not seen. And here's my thing on the transparency in a nutshell is that I don't understand why. And I know, there's times in different markets, there's times in the country right now where the ridership's back up, prices for them are back up higher. They've dropped a little bit back down, but then drivers are down in some markets. And for the most part, we've always had oversaturation of drivers. And even right now, when I'm saying lack of drivers, I still think we're saturated with drivers. It's just not as saturated. But here's the thing. Why can't, and when we're talking about transparency, why can't it, I'm not even going to advocate for let's have better transparency. Why can't it be full? Why can't it be here's the amount, here's the distance you're going, here's where you're picking up, here's where you're taking them, here's how much it's going to pay. Why can't it just be that? Or take away the per minute, make it $1 a mile on X or things like this. Just make things easier, but show everybody everything up front. Because here's the thing. There are people who there's places I don't like to go, and it's not necessarily the shadiness. It's just that I know, oh my God, if I have to go down there, I'm never going to get a ride back. I'm going to be stuck down there for a while. There's a lot of reasons that I make my decisions on which rides I would take. With full transparency, I would actually take more rides than I probably did have, because I've turned down some that after the amount of time I did it, I just knew how to read things like that's not going to be good. I just could read it. And I'd say no. But now what if it was good? What if that, but if so they had just shown me the full transparency, then I can either take it or not. Here's the thing. That ride will get taken.
I
Somebody
know.
will pick up that ride and take you where you want to go. In fact, somebody might live where you live and they're done for the night. And where they're taking you is their apartment complex. Same one.
Well, can I interject right there? Because those rides that are undesirable, if we're just talking about rideshare, those rides that are undesirable, that's why they spend so much time coming up with things like ride streaks. Because if you're something, look, I don't think I'm talking out of school here. And again, I don't mean to get all conspiracy theory about stuff, but I know I'm not the only guy by looking at Reddit threads and other forums that has experienced, an $18 3 streak. And on the third ride, it's 18 minutes away for a 4.7 passenger. So going back to what you said, those rides are going to get taken. They have the tools to do that. They're incentivizing you to take those kind of rides. So, I mean, if they're going to spend that much time on getting us to take, garbage rides, then why can't you just spend a little bit more time keeping us safe? I mean, we have Amber alerts on the radio. Why can't they spend a little bit more time, like genuinely advocating for our safety?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And why can't they take and again, why can't they just take all the games away and have
Yeah.
a better flat pay rate and no games? I don't need I hate the games, because like you were saying about the 18, let's say it's a $25 streak. You get one, you get two, and they're short. And then if they don't have some far one you don't want to do, sometimes you wait 45 minutes for that third one. Or you get kicked off the platform and you come back on and they don't recognize that you already had a 2 streak going.
Last weekend, I was on ride 49 of a 50 ride Uber streak for $210. Guess how long I waited for ride number 50, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know. At 49, I probably would have
1 hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
All the rest, the 9 rides previous to that were back to back to back to back to back. Come on, man.
This between you and I think a lot of the listeners, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out what happened there.
Sure.
They literally want you to, okay, let's just keep them on the road in case a lot of other people turn off. That's all they were doing. They were pushing it as far as they could. Basically, that hour 45 was probably, think about it. They study, and this isn't conspiracy theory. This is fact, people. They study how we react to the offers we're given. And so they probably knew that was about your threshold. They probably knew at half hour you were mad, at an hour you were pissed, at an hour 15 you're thinking about stopping anyway, and at an hour 45 they were pushing it. So they better just give you the damn ride. But they somehow knew that was, and you probably were, maybe you wouldn't have waited 2 hours. Maybe in that last 15 minutes, you were about to go screw this, and they just know that. They know how, I hate to say this because there's no way to really explain how and why. Well, I guess the why is obvious, but the how on how they do this, but it's actually not that difficult, really. Plotting points of where you live, of where you've been driving, how often you've been taking the rides, what type of rides you like, all that stuff of what you're accepting. They take, if you don't think that computers can take that into a microsecond and spit out a result for you, you're crazy.
Well, going back to the young lady that I did that was also driving for Uber and Lyft, we would literally sit side by side on the couch and we would look as one phone would show surge in one area and her phone would show either no surge or a different kind of surge. Sitting side by side with her.
I've done that too.
Oh, yeah. People. Sitting in the middle of, side by side with 4 other Uber and Lyft drivers, and then everybody, they're getting rides, but you're not for some reason. So I don't know what all that, and that doesn't have anything to do with all the stuff that I was talking about before, but it does.
No, but it does because it goes to the algorithm manipulations that do happen.
Sure.
And again, instead of spending all that money on on bonuses, and hey, bring a friend in and we'll give them $3,000 to do 160 rides in 30 days and you'll get 800. Okay, that's $3,800 that could have been way better allocated.
Sure.
Because here's the thing, Uber doesn't need to, I mean, look at Grubhub. Grubhub doesn't offer a referral program. And in fact, Grubhub is known for making you wait upward of a year to be able to get on their platform, because they find out what they need in a market, and then they're like, no, we have enough, you're waiting. And I'm okay with that. I would rather be on a waiting list than just overboard the drivers so much that there's no work. So I'm okay with that. But like, if they can do that, there's no reason that Uber and Lyft, I don't know. I mean, I honestly believe that there are people I know who would take any ride. There are people I know who, they'll take the junk, what I call complete junk rides. So just put it out there transparently. Show everything. I mean, and here's my thing to Lyft. I mean, I know some people claim Lyft is closer to a profit than Uber. I question that, because Uber's a much bigger company and that's a harder breakdown to actually work and say it is true. But, if you are Lyft and where we are, it's Hail Mary time. So do something different. Try full transparency. I would be very shocked to see what would happen if Lyft went to full transparency. Here's how much you're going to get paid for this. Here's where you're picking up. Here's where you're going. They got 2 passengers. We now require no background checks, but require their picture on the app that sends us a picture. I don't want to see a picture of your dog. I don't care about your dog. I mean, no offense. I love dogs. I got one right here laying down, but I don't want to see a picture of your dog. And, I mean, I've had pickups. I had one in a fairly I'm from Michigan, born and raised, and, spent a lot of time in Detroit. And so I'm used to no streetlights and some sketchy stuff. So in Denver, it's not really like that, but there are some areas. And I mean, like, I've had pickups that are gold plated teeth only, close up as the profile picture. And the person's name is Demand.
Little Ghost.
Right. Or G Money or something. And it's like, dude, what am I doing here? Like, I don't even know who I'm looking for. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm seeing gold teeth and the name Dumb Man, I don't know. And I'm sitting in an area that has no lights, I'm a little worried.
I understand that. I do. Let me wrap up with this. There's also kind of a transverse reality to all this, and that is this. And I'm glad you brought up Lyft. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a request for a passenger that was a 4.6 on Lyft. So on Lyft in my market, you get deactivated at 4.7 as a driver. This was a 4.6 as a passenger.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled up and just expecting the worst, like 2 Great Pyrenees dogs, somebody extinguishing a cigarette right up to the point of getting in my car, the absolute, just throwing back a bottle of, I don't know, White Claw or whatever the kids drink these days. And I got there and it was just this perfectly diminutive, beautiful young lady. She could not have been nicer. And she said, she got in the car, and after about a minute, we were going up Macadam, and she said, hey, do you mind if I ask? It took me almost 45 minutes to get a driver. What's going on? I try to do everything right. And I said, let me stop you right there. Your rating is horrible. And I said, I don't mean this in any kind of negative sense. I'm telling you this right out of the gate. I don't know if you've just had bad luck with drivers. I don't know what's going on. And she said, let me stop you right there. She said, I'm a professional dancer, and my name is so-and-so, and I usually get picked up at about 2 a.m. And when guys pick me up, it's always at my club, and they're always coming on to me, and I have to fight them off. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I told her, I said, there's ways around this. I said, maybe, get a burner phone, start, get another kind of, she'd gotten kicked off of Uber because of the same kind of things. And she goes, this Lyft is my only access to rideshare right now. I said, look, go, go down to Fred Meyer or whatever your bank, go get, put $100 into an account and get a card and just open a new account under a fake name. I said, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just, so it does go both ways. And I try to keep that into perspective, that it's all, we're all just experimenting out here. And at the end of the day, we're going to get something done with conversations like this.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that safety and transparency are huge. It seems to be your big two issues. They're definitely my big two issues. Um, so I mean, for that, I'm glad you reached out to me for that reason, because I also like always hearing about markets and what's going on. And I've been curious about Portland. I have a friend who drives delivery services only now, not rideshare. He used to do rideshare, who lives, I think, just north of Portland, but services the Portland area. But he won't do rideshare right now. He won't touch it. Um, and I don't think it's a matter of money. I think it's a matter of what you're talking about. He's just like, I'm not going to he's got 6 kids. He's not going to put himself out there. He's not going to put anything at risk over whatever this is, even if because I mean, there is no way of telling. I don't know. I really do believe transparency is the answer, though. And I don't know why these companies are so scared of it. It's not like they've got 5 drivers in each city and they've got to make sure they're taking the rides. You guys, these rideshare companies are overpopulated in every city. And it would actually, in my book, it would actually help people do better, the drivers. So since you already know the full transparency and are creating advanced coding to cover and mask what we should see, why not just unmask it? Show me the whole thing. You know what? I'm going to do more rides in a night if you show me the whole thing.
And there's nothing wrong with incentivizing bad rides. I mean, that's why they give truck drivers better money for long haul. There's just stuff in life that sucks. And, rideshare isn't brain surgery. It's not all that hard to do if you have to. I mean, I know it's market to market, but all you have to do is just incentivize somebody to do that. And I think they already have the plan with, streaks and bonuses and stuff like that. So I don't think that transparency is asking a whole lot. But at the same time, I guess I kind of have to pedal back, because if somebody was going to go to that ride where they got shot, now somebody is just getting an extra $6 to go to the area where they got shot. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I mean, transparency is probably more of a tool for the driver to try to protect themselves, and then it's still kind of a risk and a gamble for people that want to take the incentivizations. I don't know.
Well, that's with the transparency, they could allow to get rid of all that crap. They could bump the per mile rate up a little bit and just get rid of all the junk. Get rid of the $3,000 referrals and the 800 on this side and all the little games and the triple streaks and the you're a blue driver, you're a red driver, you're an X driver, you're a enough. We do what we do, and just pay us correctly per mile and keep us safe and be transparent. Because again, I do think I know, and this is not a racial thing. I do know people who are white, black, Hispanic, whatever, who might only want to service this area. And I know other people who are in the same, it doesn't matter what they are, who are willing to do everything. So let the people be comfortable with what they're doing, because now it's just becoming scary when because now you don't have enough information to go. We're not even accepting good rides based on good information. You're still guessing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's never a time when you're like, this is a great ride, this is going to go awesome. You don't know that.
Right.
But I think that if they just were transparent, I just don't. I mean, it's blown my mind for years. I don't get it. I don't even from a corporate standpoint, I don't get what they get out of this. They're still going to onboard a ton of people. The markets are still going to be oversaturated, so they're going to have enough drivers. But the customer experience is going to be way better too if the driver wants that ride. Because when I go somewhere and I pick somebody up, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been tricked too, where somebody puts in a destination and then they change it once they're in the car to a place I
Oh,
don't want to go.
oh, that's been happening a lot to me recently. That happens to me a lot, especially late at night. I don't know what it is. It seems like I'll get there and it's supposed to be like a 4 mile ride or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden it's a ride over state lines, like to an area where I'm going to take a loss on the ride because I'm going to have to deadhead back so far. No, and yeah, and that's, I guess good for them because they figured out the game too. Is kind of like when you're at a sporting event, if you walk a block up, then you're not paying the $10 surge outside of the stadium. You know,
Right.
I can kind of see where they want to do that, but it does but then you're also subjected to that person's rating. So if you have to be your best self in that situation or you get penalized.
Yeah.
And if you cancel, then you risk deactivation.
Yeah. Well, but still, I mean, if any drivers out there need to cancel, cancel. Go with your gut. You know what I mean? I always tell people that go with your gut, man. Don't, if you're feeling something bad about a ride, go with your gut. Take the punishment or the slap for the cancellation, which as long as you're doing rides shouldn't be too bad. It's just going to be a cancellation, but um, I don't know. I've never really had a fear of like what I do on the app. I've done enough rides where I would just be like, what? Will you cancel the ride? Yeah, I did. It was unsafe. I pulled up and there were people fighting. I was I wasn't
Oh,
gonna
sure.
get out of the car and go, hey, one of you guys call an Uber? Like, I don't want any of them in my car.
How
So
many of those do you actually report though? Like when you pull up and there's a volatile situation and you cancel out of your own personal interest, do you actually report that to Uber or
in
do
the
you, at
beginning,
what point, at what point would you?
in the beginning, I was pretty all over it. And going back to what you were saying about minors, I used to be a big advocate with that with Lyft and Uber. In fact, I had some direct contacts even because they knew that like there's North High School here, or North High School in downtown Denver isn't far from me. It's it has about 4,500 people. It's a huge high school. After school, there's two cop cars right outside. I would pull because every day after school, 3 o'clock on the nose. If I'm anywhere in the vicinity, I'd get pings. Nobody's of age. Maybe one person out of the 4,500 is of age, but nobody's of age to be able to ride. And I just would pull up behind the cop cars and turn my dash camera over to the passenger window and crack it and lock the doors. And I would just sit there. And as soon as somebody came up and said, "Oh, you're my ride," I'd be like, "No, I'm not," because or at first I'd be nice. I'd say, "Are you, can I see your ID? Because you don't look of age." Well, this is my mom's account, so it's cool though. She said it's fine. You can call her. And I'd be like, well, I can't take you unless your mom's here or unless you're with a supervised adult. I mean, I just can't. And I found that sitting behind the police cars really freaked him out. But then, because in the beginning when I didn't do that, I found people going, listen, I'll give you a bad review and all this stuff. And so I was like, you know what, just cancel it. And they'd be like, no. But I found when I pulled up behind the police cars that I'd be like, look, cancel it right now in a more firm tone. And they'd be like, okay. Like they knew those two cops are there and they don't know that they're necessarily there because they're not there with me. But they knew that very quickly I could make this a situation.
Sure.
you know,
My my favorite my favorite juke is when somebody tries to get me to cancel, and I'll talk them in. I'll let them kind of float on it for a minute, and then I'll say, "Hey, you're going to get charged one way or the other. I have to wait here for 5 minutes, and then I get my cancellation fee for doing this." I said they charge you about $1 per minute above what you would pay on the ride. Like I just tell them anything to get them to cancel. But then I see a bunch of posts on, again on Reddit or whatever, and everybody's like, I don't worry about I'm at a 13% cancellation rate. And I've always read that you're supposed to keep your cancellation rate at about a 5%, or else
right.
you risk deactivation. So I don't know if that's just folklore or
But
what's going on.
look at, and I'll use only Uber Eats as an example. Look at Uber Eats. Uber Eats has I know most Uber Eats drivers I know have a under 10% acceptance rate. Most DoorDashers I know are around 5% acceptance rate.
But that's different from cancellation rate.
Is it okay? But here's the next step. What about all these people who accept DoorDash orders or Uber Eats orders, pull up to the restaurant, it's too crowded, and they do what's called drop the order? Now another driver has to step in and come get that order. You accepted that order. That's your job. I mean, like in rideshare, we're not privy to such a thing. We can't just go, you know what? I hate this ride. Get out. Like,
You're right.
like, it's not like we can just go, I'm sick of this. You know, I mean, it's really weird. So I'm using Uber as the example because it's the same platform. They have standards for the drivers, but for the delivery drivers, they have way too many. I mean, now they're oversaturated there too. And yet they're allowed to do whatever the heck they want.
That makes sense. Yeah. I've never worked delivery. I've always had a pushback. I don't know if it's just my mom or something that's inside of me that's just like, go get your own hamburger, bro. I can't do it. I'm sure that it probably should have paid well, especially over the pandemic, but I don't know what it is about me. I've just never been able to do delivery. Now, if you told me that you had somebody that wanted to load 13 socket wrenches in the back of my Hyundai Elantra and you wanted me to drive them to Spokane for $125, I'd be all over it. But if I'm bringing you a hamburger, I don't know. I don't know what it is about me.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. I've done them simply because research.
Yeah.
You know, I've done my 30,000 ride shares, so nobody can question me. I do Curry, I do other platforms. However, shopping and delivery is just not my space.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, I just don't want to be, I don't like doing my own shopping. So, you know, it's like, I don't want to be spending all day in the store. And the fact that Instacart's one of the lowest paying of all the gigs is shocking to me that people want to do this all day. But I do know people do very well in delivery. It's just not my thing. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's partially too, I don't want my car smelling all the time. Just simple dumb, what other people might call dumb to me. You know, like people have said to me, like, I can't believe you would prefer rideshare. I'm like, yeah, when things are back to normal, I do, because I like the communication for the most part. I mean, usually we've told some bad stories here today, but usually I've had great experiences, met some wonderful people. You know, I mean,
yeah, and I agree. And I think that a lot of what I went through, I mean, I could tell you 3 or 4 more stories, but it really was in kind of a microcosm of this, you know, the circumstances surrounding not just my city, but surrounding the world. So it probably created a lot of things that were out of my control. But the overall thing was, you know, those things are going to happen. And I wish that Uber and Lyft would just take a more solutions-based approach to it. But then again, I'm so conflicted about, you know, well, nobody told you to go there and you're an independent contractor, but then again, I'm not. So we're all just kind of looking for all that.
You and I are on the same page that it really, I don't think there's probably other band-aid fixes they could do that, you know, might appear to be working on some level. Like we were joking about beforehand about like the say my name or make sure the child locks off on the door when you get it. First of all, these people are hammered. They can barely read the license plate number. I mean, I was talking to Hannibal not too long ago about how, like, dude, all you gotta do is have a Lyft sticker or beacon in your car. Just pull up outside of a bar and just park for a while and somebody will get in your car.
Yeah.
I mean, then just do whatever you want to them, because that's that.
Yeah, no, I live in an apartment complex and I can't tell you how many times I've went to just go get my mail and I leave my door open and all of a sudden here's a lady and her child trying to get into my passenger side rear seat. And I have to be like, no, I'm off duty. Oh, I thought you were my Uber. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we just don't have that kind of standard. So the only fix that I see will work, and I've always said to people, please share with me any other ideas, but the only thing that's going to work is transparency. Show me everything up front. And then at that point, it is on me. I mean, if I get a bad passenger or something happens, then I'm still willing to deal with it in the fashion that I have to, even though I don't like the way these companies do it. But without showing me everything, if something happens, there's just a part of me, and, you know, you can be a lawyer, you could debate me on this, but there's a part of me that says, if you're not telling me everything and something happens to me, part of that falls on you. And I'm not talking about the law or anything. I'm talking about just common sense.
And I think that again, we also need to redefine discrimination when it comes to independent contractor work, because just because I'm not taking a job in an area for a specific reason is not an indication of my character. It's not me calling that area out
I have to
because,
wonder how many of those are just people wanting to get free rides. I've seen it too much.
well, no, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, when I started there, you would get in trouble if you would. One of the reasons that they started pushing back on full transparency and rider drop off was because there was drivers that would not travel into a certain area, and so they defined that as area discriminatory. And I think that we need to redefine that, because
Well,
just because I don't want to go into an area,
just take it out and but that's my point. Just take it out, because here's the thing. There is no reason to even have that terminology, because
right?
if you deny that ride, you see it all up front. I don't want that. That's nothing about discriminatory. That's just what you're doing. You're doing you. You're trying to make your money. There might be somebody who's like, oh, oddly, who might say that's a perfect ride for me right now in the here and now.
Right. And
And
it's like you said earlier, it's everybody puts a picture of their dog or a picture of baby Yoda or whatever it is on their profile anyway. So I'm not discriminating against this person. I don't know what they look like. I just don't want to go into this area because it's not going to financially benefit me right now. Or perhaps there's been some activity that I'm terrified of. Somebody else will go get it.
right. I mean, my reasons for not taking rides, even when transparency was better or whatnot, was never based on anything except for what does this do to my earnings this evening?
Right.
And if I saw it as that's not a good step for me right now, I would rather wait and take the next one. And
I guess
here's the thing is that okay, so wouldn't you rather have me decline it anyway than accept it and then see I don't want it and have to cancel it? I mean, just be
totally.
transparent. Just let me see it and go, I don't want that, because there's 100 Uber drivers around me. One of them is going to take it real quick too.
From a 30,000-foot perspective, though, I could understand as a large corporation that if enough of that stuff started happening as a pattern, that they could see that as a potential suit against them. But at the same time, that in and of itself, if that's truly the case, then that in and of itself, that fact calls for a third classification.
Yeah. I honestly, something's going to happen. I think you and I both are aware of this. I mean, this just can't keep going on. We're seeing more murders, more stabbings, more shootings, more rapes, everything right now. And even before, a couple months back, when ridership was way down from where it's historically been, more things were happening, which makes no sense. I mean, I know the world's crazier right now, but again, all the more reason. And I would think when it really comes down to it, if you give us drivers complete transparency, I feel a lot better being on the platform and not being able to point my finger at Uber or Lyft. I would have to point it at myself.
That's a great point. It's a great point.
You made a bad call on this one. Don't do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, live and learn, and that's how you learn the jobs. But I mean, like that, I would think that would just shut people up too. Like, instead of going, Uber, you did this to me. Like, no, you saw everything. They showed you everything. So I really just don't get it. I'm sure there's a reason, but if it's their worry about the person not getting a ride to where they want to go, I would debate that with anybody at Uber any day of the week, because I would say, let's try it in one market for 2 days. Let's just try it. Let me sit in the room with you guys, so I'm monitoring what's going on here, and I want to see that rider waits any more than 5 seconds longer than they would have to get a ride.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Steve, I bet that person in an adverse part of a urban community waits a lot less longer than someone that's in a rural area for a ride.
Right. And all the better with transparency, people in a rural area might pick it up. It's hard to explain, but when you're a driver, it makes sense to us where we are, how our night's going, how we're trying to play it out. We all do things a little different. So these rides are going to get taken.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather, and even I use them as passenger. So I'd rather somebody pick me up who wants the ride. I don't want somebody going, you're going here. Like, you know what? Because here's me. I'm still going to give you a 5-star. Sadly, I do. I just, because I'm a driver myself, I just know what it can do. And so I'm still going to give you a 5-star. I'm still going to tip you, but I don't want somebody all pissy that they have to go somewhere. I'd rather have
Totally.
the guy who's like, dude, sweet. I'm ending my night. I live across the street from there. Thank you. I needed this ride.
Well, this has been beautiful, Steve. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. 5 stars, and I'll tip you on the app. Uh, uh, I'm gonna.
Hey, can you
I'm gonna
show me how to do that so
yeah.
that so I
I'm
can
gonna.
show others?
I'm gonna email you my phone number, my friend. Contact me anytime. I'd love to be a part of what you're doing, and um, yeah, and I won't be a bother.
No, no bother, man. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a peaceful evening. Have a great holiday season.
Yeah, you as well.
All right, man. Take care.
Peace.